Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRN AM for Monday, May 13th, 2024. And our top story today, gray divorces are on the rise. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Alex Jacobson of the Jacobson Mediation Group. Alex, so great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, and I know that one of your focus areas is mediation, and I want to get into that in a little bit, possibly in segment two. But let's talk about this trend of the gray divorce. And before we get into the trend, what exactly is a gray divorce?
I think the concept is sort of a cheeky definition for people in their 50s get divorced, in older stages of life. Kids are grown out of the house. They're left just the two of them and perhaps decide we don't really have much in common now that the kids are on.
So with that being said, I mean, we're obviously living longer. Most of us are living longer. There's greater longevity. What brought about this trend, and is it truly a trend? I mean, I have friends who are in their 50s. They seem pretty happy in their marriage, even though their kids are gone. So, but what brought about this trend? Is it just that, hey, I want my second life kind of thing?
I think that's part of it. I think that, yes, we are living longer. And as we were just sort of talking offline, age is just a number. And so, 50 is perhaps the new 30. And if you're feeling young and healthy, it's an opportunity to say, hey, perhaps we aren't so compatible. We both have a lot of life left to live. And why do it in a way that isn't fulfilling both of us? So let's find a way to disentangle and move on with our many years to come.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. And, the expectation obviously may be a little bit different than when my parents were, or other generations where you got married and you stayed together through thick and thin. Even if you had a little bit of a ships passing in the night kind of experience. But has the expectation around marriage changed culturally? So is it more, I don't want to say transactional because I think there's love involved, but is it more in a way transactional? Like, hey, it's for this period of time, and then I'll look for something better, in the future.
Perhaps. I think another view of that is it's not so taboo. Back when I was growing up and my parents' generation, it was taboo. There were very few kids in my class growing up who had divorced parents. It's not so uncommon. And women, for example, feel that they can move on with their lives, notwithstanding that they were a stay-at-home mom or, being in the career world.
And do we need to set different expectations when we're dating, in terms of how we overlay our own expectations on the other individual? Do we need to do a better job in evaluating our partners? And I don't mean that to be in a critiquing way, and I'm not asking for W-2s or 1099s. I often used to joke about that. I'm talking about, does this person truly fit outside of the package, the look, but the personality? What are their long-term goals? Do we need to have a better layering of that over our goals of marriage?
I think so. My background is as a divorce lawyer, so you're asking me to veer off into my views of marriage, but I think it is really important to look beyond just the here and now. And is this working now? Look at their families. Look at their views on finances. Look at their views on raising children and how they were raised. It's all very indicative of the way they might conduct their lives going forward. And does that match your own set of values? So it seems so simple, but when you're caught in the moment, perhaps not so simple.
Yeah, those emotions start to creep in, and it takes over that rational part of thinking. Alex, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how you manage when you go through a gray divorce. or divorce in general, you're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Alex, thanks so much for staying with us this morning. Really appreciate you hanging around for segment number 2.
Of course.
A great topic, and as we said, this is kind of a trend, and you read about it. I mean, it is a kind of a catchy phrase, gray divorce. But let's talk about some practical tips for individuals that may be going through this. Obviously, or not obviously, but for a lot of people in their gray years, and again, I think I agree with you, 50 is the new 30 is someone in their 50s. But how do we prepare ourselves financially to go through this gray divorce? Because it can be very disruptive, especially for women.
Sure. I mean, I think that there are a couple points to keep in your mind. I mean, let's take your home, for example. If you're going through a divorce, one may think, well, I need to replicate this exact home, this 3-bedroom basement, big house, post-divorce. Well, if you're in your 50s and, your children have flown the coop and they're in college, perhaps it is a more sound financial planning to downsize in your gray years and, look for a smaller house in post-divorce life. From a career perspective, you asked the question about women, not to be stereotypical, but, if you've been a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad, it can be perhaps quite scary to then be financially independent. That is in part what spousal support is for. And so that will be an important consideration as you're going through your divorce and making your assets work for you going forward from a retirement perspective.
And last time you were on, you talked about mediation. Look, divorces can be costly, forgetting the disposition of assets and the breakup of the assets, but it can be costly just on the hourly rate, especially if two parties are going to hem and haw and argue and fight over certain things. How does mediation, or can mediation, kind of bring those costs down and actually simplify, if that's even possible, a gray divorce?
Absolutely. There are many reasons why mediation is far more beneficial than, going through the litigation process. But in terms of simplifying the process, very often in litigation, there are just sort of blanket, very wide discovery requests. Attorneys are spending hours and hours pouring through account statements and tax returns. And very often it's just not necessary. We can streamline the process to make sure that everybody has complete financial disclosure regarding the assets of that marriage, and walk through what a comprehensive financial agreement can look like in a very streamlined fashion. That doesn't mean that you can't have lawyers involved in the process to either participate on the sidelines or participate in real time to give that feedback. But it doesn't need to become adversarial, because unless you're looking to extract a pound of flesh from your spouse, the litigation route is rarely optimal.
Yeah, you certainly certainly know. Some people want to extract a pound of flesh, 2, 3, 5, 10, but that's not often the case. What about the prenuptial agreement? And again, that's not going to help somebody unless they have one who is going through a divorce. But are you seeing that as a document that might help streamline things on the back end? And this is really going back to our conversation in segment 1, is that our expectation for our marriage. But is that prenuptial agreement helpful on the back end in the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. I was speaking of the fact that divorce was taboo 20, 30 years ago. So too were premarital agreements. And now they are not so taboo. It's actually quite common in terms of planning your marriage, how you're going to run your finances during your marriage and in the event of divorce or in the event of death. And it's, from my perspective, very thoughtful to contractually obligate each other to a game plan in those circumstances. It's just good planning and certainly streamlines the process in the event of a divorce.
Yeah. Last question here, Alex, and this is a fascinating conversation because we're actually talking about cultural norms, but also talking about legal and litigative norms. But I want to ask you about the emotional. How do you prepare for the emotional toll? Because I've heard people that have gone through a divorce say, hey, you kind of have lost your individual self as part of this partnership. So there may be an emotional toll to this. How do you factor that into what you're doing in helping guide your client or clients through this mediation or arbitration process?
I think it's really important that you have your team together. It's a very monumental time in somebody's life to go through a divorce. Have your therapist on standby, have your family, have your friends, a career coach if that's what you need. There are many avenues to get the support that you need going through the process, and make sure you have a lawyer that you trust, that you get along with, and that's responsive to your needs and will answer your questions so that you can feel properly supported going through it.
Yeah, that emotional toll, I think, is people maybe, again, underestimate until you're in the throes of it, but you make some really good points. Alex, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for having me.
That wraps up this episode of BRNAM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content, then visit our website. We're back again tomorrow with another edition of BRNAM with a very special guest and, of course, another important topic. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.